All right, folks. So this is it. This is it. Your day to dazzle us. I've been watching these projects in various phases. I'm so glad you got a chance to kind of preview them a bit for each other when we did a workshop. But you guys are going to be knocked out by each other. Not to raise the bar too high, but so what we're going to do, just to make the technology not get in our way, we're going to begin the best way, since we lose our extra tech support at 9, would be to begin with you guys on online, and then we'll do the guys in the room, and then we will do the folks who are here from the past or the future. Past, I guess it could be. So let's just start. Who wants to go first? Okay, okay. I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 5. Katie, what is it?
3.
Okay, what is it, Jennifer? Okay, you're right, Jennifer. You're closest.
Except that
and we were going with Price is Right rules, so.
Right. Okay, so everything evolved a little, just like the dragons. So what I came up with was Dragon 2019. Can you hear me, guys?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yes, oh, please, yes.
So here it is. I won't go to my prototype yet. Do you want to see all the sections like home and about and everything, or do you want to see?
Yeah, I'm asking for what is it? What informs it? What does it do that isn't already being done by existing projects?
Okay. So what is it? This is Dragonpalooza 2019, and so I decided to go with from the point of view of a dragon. I'll just go ahead to the prototype. From the point of view of dragons, let's say they want to go to a concert and they want to go hang out. So here we are. It's Dragonpalooza 2019. It's a weekend summer festival for dragons. So here's where they can sign up. It will be held in Geatland this year, hosted by Beowulf. Okay, so what informs it? Here's the project that kind of informs it and then it could be tied to. And I'm going to click this link here, and that will take us over here to Beowulf Resources. This is a site I think I showed you guys before by Araby Green. It has all of the Beowulf stuff. And the reason I didn't choose Beowulf, Electronic Beowulf 4.0 is that she has the link to that anyway right here. So this is more in-depth than just Electronic Beowulf 4.0 and all of this other museums and archaeological findings and what have you. So high school dual credit student, whatever, coming here to be like, oh, cool, these dragons are going to go to a festival, are here, and they click that and they can actually get some real life Beowulf stuff. And then down here I have, hey, if you're welcome to come if you're a dragon, but if this event is not for humans. If you are a human and you want to do something like it, you can click here. And this is a real site that does like reenactment of Anglo-Saxon days and whatever. So I had that in my Zotero. So anyway, that's the kind of introductory slide. So the second slide here, I went ahead and did make the tree of influence of Beowulf's dragon. So here's Beowulf's dragon. And I know this is hard to see. I would zoom, but I don't know if I'll mess things up. So I'll kind of tell you what it says. Basically, all of these little choices are the different, or I just chose a few different authors that created dragons and the traits that they kind of share with Beowulf's dragon. I went with Sir Mallory when he writes King Arthur stuff. So if he wrote it, and I put the year in here for when that was written. So Mallory goes first, and then Tolkien is not, or of course that's the 1600s or whatever. Tolkien is 1937, C.S. Lewis. So if they share, like, here's fire breathing, Mallory has that, Tolkien's smog has that, George R.R. Martin has that, and J.K. Rowling has that. Over here, they guard treasure, like this dragon. That is in Mallory, Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, and Rowling. So what I found through just going through just those authors was that the person most influenced is Tolkien, because he's got most of the same traits as this Beowulf's dragon. And I'll go ahead and skip down to what DH tool could be used to further this would be the Google Ngram, where you could really take off and, you know, map the Eastern and Western dragons and, you know, kind of show a more of, you know, from like distant reading, like Moretti would talk about, you know, just all those little authors that are hidden and we don't know about. How did this influence them? They're maybe not popular, but they still put this aspect into their dragons or what have you. What does it do that other DH projects don't? I say it gives an alternate perspective to venturing into Beowulf. It brings fun and humor to it, and it shows the influence that the earliest piece of English literature that we know about, Beowulf, has on all these other authors, you know, because it shows students that, you know, some of these aspects of the dragons they're creating didn't just come from their own minds. They used former pieces of literature to build these concepts of dragons over the course of time. And hopefully that would inspire students to realize that they could build on these themes and continue to write based on that. Just to show you some more slides of what this project looks like. I did put a band lineup. You can go click these links to YouTube. Peter, Paul, and Mary are playing at the family night on Friday. Then Imagine Dragons play the next night of Monsters and Men. And these YouTube, you know, links go to, you know, their concerts, you know, or music videos for these songs. So we will not actually play that, but, you know, it goes. Anyway, so, you know, of course we have to have vendors. So I told you a little bit about this, but I went ahead and said, you know, if you want to eat at the Lair, this gold encrusted corn dog sword on a stick will have you so full you think you've been stabbed in the gut. And then Grendel's Diner, our good friend Grendel shares age-old recipes from his mom. Try the biscuits and Grendel gravy, good, you know. And then Harriet's Hall, that's actually my family, you know, eating the stuff I made. Enjoy an eggless and feast of chicken, eggs, stew, and fruits and cider. So that's, you know, the vendor lineup as you would find on any, I don't know about you guys, but I am always looking for what's going on in different cities and seeing what weird, you know, festival we can go to. So events, here's the lineup. And there's a light sleeper contest. You get a coupon book if you win, a lair auction, and it benefits lairless dragons. The concert, the sword fighting, the workshops, which we'll see the list of that in a minute, a golden cup relay race, Beowulf in the Park by the Dragon Folks Theater, a Laserworks concert with Imagine Dragons playing, and the fireworks, which I thought an X would be fun, I don't know, and an unplugged acoustic by Of Monsters and Men. And then how to go back to being a human. That's where the dragons that have been switched, and you click here and there's like an actual YouTube video of a song that's based on C.S. Lewis's Eustace, and you know how he had to shed his skin. So there's a little song about that. And then staying awake in the daytime. That one is staying awake in the daytime. Oh yeah. So that's a song called Awake and Alive, and it has let's see, it has the dragons from, I think it's How to Train Your Dragon. And then one more, which, or this property insurance presentation I had on a PDF, I guess, and it won't go to the link, but it would on my computer, you know. And so Wounding a Hero Without Regret, I had to put my favorite 80s band in here. I don't know if you guys know the Bangles, but this song is kind of funny because it's The Hero Takes the Fall, which I thought was hilarious because, of course, the dragons want the heroes down. So that's an old 80s. If anybody wants to hear that. And then I have problems with your earless. So if you click that, you will go to the University of Texas Linguistics Research Center, and you can find out what that word means and hopefully take your whole Beowulf book and find out what all the words mean. So there you go. That's the project. and I'll get out of that. And then, of course, I had my about and all this good stuff in here. But you don't want me to go through this, right?
No, but
Okay.
but everybody can see it. We've got it all in the shared drive. So,
yes.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. All right. So how about Katie and Tamara?
All right. Okay. Can you see mine?
Yes.
All right. So, all right, Tamara, can you see it? Okay. Okay, so ours is the Jane Project. I feel like I've said that 47 times, so I'm sorry, y'all. But it's good to be like out. Okay, so then would you rather us just go through kind of the prototype and then?
Yeah, that probably makes sense. The criteria is, what is it? What informs it? What does it do that isn't already being done? Why is it important to have this project in the world and an existing DH tool, if you have it, that might help power it?
Cool. Okay, so then Tamara, do you want to do just a little bit from the About page, and then I'll go through the prototype?
I can. So we can just stay right here. The About page, we were just saying what fueled it. We were looking at what other digital humanities projects do, and at the time, we hadn't found a digital humanities project that showed connections between other characters. And so we were anticipating showing the connections between different Janes to show their effectiveness or their impact on the world, and like whether they were a real Jane or a character Jane. How did they impact the world? How did they change our culture? And so we wanted to show those connections. And at the time, we actually didn't find a digital humanities project that did that. Since we did the midterm peer review, I actually found one. You can go to it on the map. And we actually found one that's really awesome. And it would be the best one for us to kind of model after. And they actually have where you can move bubbles over and see how the different people are connected. And so that's what we were really anticipating. But more than that, we wanted to show how Janes impacted the world and how they broke out of that social boundary.
One of the things that we found as a possible tool that we could implement within the structure of what we had already developed. So I think I showed y'all last time, we have 2 prezzies set up now that could be included as part of the prototype. So this is the map of the Janes, which would show the relationship between each of the women. As Tamara said, if you click on like the Janes of the UK, you would see these ones that could be grouped together, right? And you'd be able to kind of pop out the dolls from each one. I'll go over the dolls in a second. But one of the tools that she found is from this Kindred Britain, and you're able to choose different people. Like say you wanted to look at Sigmund Freud and how he's related to, let's see, John Constable. It kind of like links them. So you could kind of see how they might be related or how they might be connected, which relates back to what Tamara was saying about the social media aspect of this that we talked about last time, and how they are all interconnected. So with mapping of the Janes, that's going to be based on their social media presence and how they're connected overall. The timeline of Janes would be like the landing page. And so it has the different Janes lined up in more of a timeline structure. I'm not super great with Prezi, so this is just like a basic version of it. But you'd be able to see, you know, just chronologically how they would be. Where each of these circles is would be the paper doll. And so we chose paper dolls because just like the name Jane, all of the dolls start off as plain women, right? You have just a close-up of a woman. And as you're able to bring these different elements over, or we call them adornments, different adornments over that related to that doll, like it says here, they represent different aspects of that Jane, including their work, the fashion of the time, the social context, their potential social media profiles. So you'd be able to see how that would relate to their work, their impact, and kind of who they are and what influence they had.
And then from there, if I can jump in, from there you would be able to see, this was the other really driving factor, is we wanted to look at how social media was impacting the young girls of today and how their family and their friends circle really affected their life. And so part of that, with that paper doll, you would be able to see some social media posts. So who is that doll or that Jane talking to in the real world? So for example, like Jane Goodall has Jane Goodall Society, and so she's now connecting with other scientists. And so how is she furthering her work? But Jane Austen, you know, how was she suppressed, and how much further could she go on if she would have had a Twitter feed to have other people tell her, wow, you're doing a great job, to get that boldness. And so there wasn't there's not a DH project that goes into that. We have other people, the fake book that you had me explore a couple weeks ago, Dr. Carter. And so we found that there's actually a Jane Austen fake book. And so with this Digital Humanities project, users would be able to see maybe what would their connections be across the globe that in their little world in the 18th century they weren't able to connect with.
Nice work, guys.
I will say one of the things that I think I said this last time, but with our the related projects, we use that Wakelet, and I have used this for my other grad school class, but also I'm going to have my students start using this. This was such a great resource just to like dump your stuff in as you find it, and then they can go back. It's kind of like Zotero, but before you add all the information you need. It's nice just like as a folder to throw everything. So even just that was great. Anyway.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much, Katie and Tamara. All right. Okay, so who's next? Abigail, Lonnie? I don't know who else is there because we can only see that many.
There could be more.
Yeah.
I am sorry I'm late and I look like a ghost again, but I actually posted a recording because I wasn't sure if I was going to make it or not. So I can go last if somebody live has theirs or whatever you want to do.
Okay. Yeah, I think probably go ahead with the live ones. And since we have you here and you've already prepped the screencast, I can play that, and since you're here, we can ask questions.
Okay.
Is that so? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So how about you, Abigail?
All right.
Or Peter, either one.
Okay, so my presentation is called Father, Son, and the Detective Spirit. It's a play on Catholicism, if anybody's not familiar with that, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. It's about Edgar Allan Poe and his contribution to the detective genre, and just the basic fact that he started it, pretty much. It was created for the enjoyment of the everyday person. It's a website for the public. I don't mean this for academic specifically, just anybody who wants to look at it. It would include links to Poe and his writing and information about that. It was supposed to be this interactive thing, kind of like a hidden objects game where you could click on stuff and get information. But as I was looking at it and I did the analysis of it last week and the week before, I found out that that was not something that was really doable for me. So I looked around and I remembered this app called Episode where you could make your own interactive stories, and I thought that might be pretty good use for it. So it became this interactive story about how Poe created the detective genre, and then through the story and then back. It sounds like a lot. He created the template for the detective fiction, and inspiring Sir Arthur Conan Doyle to create Sherlock Holmes, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's a Spanish-speaking Mexican detective as well, when he tried to branch out from that. And Mark Twain used things like Edgar Allan Poe, because Poe used scientific advancements like looking at clues that had been hidden, an animal that had committed the murder instead of a person, false accusations and things like that. Mark Twain used things like typing in his work, so you can kind of see the connection from Poe to future authors. My literary support came from a lot of different places, a lot of the books that we read, and I found some articles about, lessons about how to use a library of digital tools, which were really interesting. The emergence of the digital humanities was a really big influence on me because it talked about a lot of things that you don't really think about are digital tools, like Wikipedia or Google Maps. And so that kind of led me to episodes and something that was the idea of what I wanted to do. Skunks in the Library is an article from the University of Virginia Library, and it's pretty much just a librarian starting their own digital humanities lab, and articles like that, what librarians can offer, Open Refine for editing Wikipedia, things like that, the tools that you can use. And it was really good for me to read this and see what kind of things that I could use later when I push this project forward. But right now it's at a very base level because I'm not very good technologically. I pulled a lot of tools out, mostly literature. I haven't really worked with a lot of technology. The only thing I was completely certain of out the entire project was that I wanted to do it on Poe and the detective genre. So the big deal with that was that I couldn't find anything about Poe in general. I found his literature, but I didn't find anything about him. And then I certainly didn't find anything about his influence on the detective genre. So I was like, what is this gigantic gap and how can I fix it? So that was really cool, but also really terrifying because it's a huge space and I wasn't really sure what to pull from to fill it in. So the concept of the project was that right now it's developed and organized by me. I'm obviously open to anybody who wants to join in, volunteers or anything, but it's to enlighten the public on the fact that Edgar Allan Poe pretty much made the detective genre, something that a lot of people don't recognize. The context started out as a group project, but I don't really know anybody who would want to join right now, but obviously I'm open for it. The whole point of it is to just talk about Poe, to get him out in the public. And the most basic part of it I want people to take away is that he was not just like this drunk, drug-addled author. He actually contributed a lot. So the goal is to talk about Poe and to talk about his influence in literature and science through his use of false clues, animals committing murder, things like you wouldn't have thought previously. The objective is to create a multimedia presentation for it, which I think Episodes does. And the activities will be available through an interactive reader. It's a choice thing. You can't really like look around, but you can choose what you want to do and how you want to do it. So this is an example of what the walkthrough looks like. I could not figure out how to do the background. I said I'm not very technologically savvy. So it's supposed to start out with Poe walking the streets, and he's been told that he has to write something new. And then you choose if you're a friend or a publisher or a fan, and then the story goes through there, and whoever you choose to be, you're going to stay with him and help him create this. And then you'll walk through the story as he's doing it, and then at the end you'll come back and he'll be like, thanks for helping me. And here is, if it'll bring up, I think I have to log in, an example of what it would look like as you work with it. So here's the script on the side, and that was one of the things that I had the worst problems with because you can get them to move, and I couldn't figure out how to do that for the longest time. Okay, so it has an introduction, and then pull that up a little bit. Okay, so it has an introduction. Welcome, you're about to join Edgar Allan Poe for the journey of a lifetime. This afternoon he was asked to create a story, something different from his melancholic microscope to humanity. And you just click it, and Poe walks in, and for some reason he does not have a nose. I didn't know how to do that. They want something new. Have I not given them enough already? They can't handle rock humanity, but they want something new. Who are you? And you can pick, and I want to be a publisher. And it's a different reaction to whatever you choose. But for the publisher, it's like, are you? If you were halfway competent, you wouldn't ask me to write more complex fiction. And that's kind of all about right now. But
Great.
it would be the gist of that, but with a background and way better. So. And then the intended result is to, like I said, bring attention to Poe. There aren't any monetary investment. I don't have any businesses or anything invested in this. And I created a PowerPoint out of it because I wanted it to be like a grant proposal in case anybody was interested later on, or if it did become a big thing. That's why it's very informational, I guess. So it doesn't have any funding. Everything I use is free. And the timeline, if it's just me, is probably 6 months, and that's probably very conservative. I monitor the project right now since it is just me. And if I completed it, whatever continuation I would do would be an upgrade. And the organization is just me. It's just me learning how to code, basically, how to write the script. I mean, that thing was like reading Greek or stereo instructions or something. It was weird. And because I'm the only person doing it and I have procrastination, it's kind of hard for me, and I kind of have to be rough on myself. But I get a lot done if I stop messing around. So it is possible. It's definitely possible. It's great. It's just hard for me. And then, of course, here's kind of information about me. I am in the doctoral program. I don't have any funding. I am a member of some societies, for honor societies or English. And unfortunately, I don't have a big community presence at the university, so I don't have a group that's willing to jump in. But maybe later. Do we need a new tool for this project? Not for this one. I think episode is a lot, and it can do a lot, and I think the only shortcoming is me. But I think there are a lot of people on campus and even off campus, because I know teenagers who can code better. So I think there is definitely a possibility that you could do it with the tools available. And here's some related projects that I found that were kind of lacking. There's the Poe Museum, and it has an audio tour in various languages, and it takes you through all the major exhibits and things, which is great if you can't make it over there, or if you just like listening to information, history, and things like that. Knowing Poe was the biggest one I drew from, because it has what I initially sort of wanted to do. It has this whole melancholy, macabre sense to it, and it's about him, and it's about what he's done, and I loved it, but I just can't do something like that. And myself, it can't hold my attention long enough to pull something like that together. I wanted it to be more interactive. And of course, I found 2 hidden objects games, which was something like I wanted to do. I wanted to initially be in the story, and then you walk around and find things, except when you find things, it would be sort of like they did with the Jane Project. You'd find information about it, and then you could decide, oh, well, this is what you do. But like I said, that was kind of a lot. And this is a hidden object game, too. And the whole point with these is that at the end of it, you solve the story, which was what I was going for initially. And then, of course, my contact email and my works cited. I think the best thing I did in this whole project was probably the PowerPoint, because that's the only thing I knew how to really do. So.
Well, wonderful. Okay, thank you, Abigail.
Hey, Dr. Carter,
Yeah.
is your thing muted? Because we're hearing a little feedback.
Oh, is it?
Ours isn't muted,
Also,
but I noticed that there's probably one or two different mics.
Okay, so you guys are having, or you're hearing us and it's getting in the way. Can we mute?
I can mute it this one. Because I noticed some of it's like earlier, I had a lot of feedback with it.
Okay, yeah.
Abigail was too a little bit.
Okay, no, sorry about
I am ready. If you want to,
Okay.
I'm on my phone still, so if you don't mind pulling it up through the. All right, the front page will look a lot like it looked a couple weeks ago. The page with our picture of Scrooge and the ghost. If you click on where it says blog, that's the primary area of difference. Now, I've added to the about this project area to give some more depth to the philosophical basis. When we went over this 3 weeks ago, I talked about some of my own philosophical interest in the area came when I first learned about post-structuralism, the idea that when we encounter a text, we bring almost as much to it as the person who wrote it because of our own network of ideas and experiences that comes. And so when we read, we're reading through our own lens, and sometimes that lens can change as our life experiences come and go, and we approach a text, at different points in our lives. And then when different people read the same text, they're obviously going to bring to it their own also separate network of connections. And so someone might read a story and come to it in a completely different way than I do. And a lot of that work was done by Roland Barthes in the 1950s, and his essay, Death of the Author, kind of summarizes that point. And he kind of comes up with the idea of a scripter instead of an author, saying that the scripter is the one who is doing the writing, and but each reader comes to the text individually. And I chose the work A Christmas Carol because it's a work I think that all of us to some degree are familiar with, and most people in the teaching of literature are going to be familiar with. And also, it helped that it was out of copyright, so it was easier to place. I found some similar projects that are new to this from when we went over this 3 weeks ago. One is called the Infinite Ulysses website, which if you've ever tried to read Ulysses, it's kind of like trying to read, for me, it's like trying to read Russian without knowing the Cyrillic alphabet. And but there's a professor at Northeastern University who put up this, she created this thing called the Infinite Ulysses. And whoever wants to can go in there, they can click it, they can make annotations, and there's a moderation process. But at the time when I put this together, there were over 1,100 annotations with 287 unique tags, and more than 24,000 unique visitors have gone to the page. And if you know how obscure, well, I'll say, if you know how difficult a novel Ulysses is, I'm kind of surprised that 24,000 people were willing to make that jump. But there they are. And it's kind of an interesting, go through and look at the annotations, some of the comments that people have made. Another project that's a little more multimedia than the one that I did is called the Freedom Ring Project. And they took the speech, I Have a Dream by Dr. Martin Luther King, and as different people go in and annotate the speech, it takes on slightly different forms. And it uses a platform called Scalar. And I'm not sure exactly how Scalar works from a technical perspective, but what the purpose of it is it takes audio and it can turn it into images on the screen, kind of like, I guess, a programmer's version of LSD, so to speak. And then there are some other more, shall we say, more text-isolated online sources. Project Gutenberg, Adelaide. There are a lot of novels and plays that have been fallen out of copyright. Go up on there, and you can download them, print them. I had a student a couple of years ago when I taught Pride and Prejudice an AP, we asked them if they can to get their own books, and this one kid showed up with a copy of Pride and Prejudice that was about the size of a yearbook, and it was hardcover, and it looked, the outside looked like one of those library books that somebody had repaired. And so I asked them, "Where'd you get that?" And they said, "I ordered it off Amazon." And I said, "How much did it cost you?" And they said, $25. And I picked it up and looked at it, and somebody had printed out Pride and Prejudice off the internet and bound it as a hardcover book and then sold it on Amazon. And I thought, well, that's genius if you can get people to do it. But so that different uses for those things. I had mentioned the website Genius a few times in prior discussions, and so I mentioned that again here. It started out as a place where you can you could put up song lyrics and make comments about them, but then people added other songs, quote unquote, and The Great Gatsby is there, along with many other out of copyright novels, many of Edgar Allan Poe's poems. So a lot of works there that people have posted, and the way if you go to Genius, one thing that's interesting is that they break down the text into the phrase and sentence level, and you can click on different phrases and it'll ask you if you want to put a comment. So if you were teaching a work and you wanted a class to be able to follow along and you wanted to go device by device, you could go through there and add all those annotations. There's not a lot on the literary level of annotation on their website now. It's kind of more general comments about the stories. But so this is kind of where I drew my inspiration. I thought, well, this would be a great thing to have for teaching purposes in the classroom, not only for a teacher to interact with students, but also for teachers to interact with other teachers, because one of the I think one reason why some teachers don't want to add new novels or plays is because, well, you've got to go through, you've got to read it again, it's hard work to put together a teaching unit on a novel where you're going to be able to lead discussions. And so having resources like this, I think, would be helpful. So if you can scroll down to where it says A Christmas Carol, Stave 1, and click on that Google Doc.
Can you talk us through it?
I can.
Okay, sorry about that, but we'll be able to look at it when we from that final project folder if you'll change that link.
Okay.
So yes, tell us what you did with it, because I think we saw earlier iterations of it. Can you tell us how it might look different, or? Sure,
I can do that. So instead of the yellow wallpaper, it's the first stave or chapter of A Christmas Carol. And in the first iteration, I just had mostly interpretive comments. And here I've added, I have some things like that. For example, it begins with near the beginning, it says Marley was as dead as a doornail. And so I talk a little bit about that simile, and then I put there's a common idiom of the day, so I put a link to an article. Several of there are lots of examples of imagery, simile, alliteration, different types of repetition that I mention and talk about with their effect. I also, at different points, such as when Scrooge and his nephew Fred are kind of going back and forth, there's some good instances of parallel structure for teaching purposes, and I put the video of that, a link to that video conversation up. Also, when Scrooge has the two charitable men who are trying to pick up charitable contributions come in, I found a mashup of that confrontation from, it looked like 6 different film adaptations, and so there's a link to that. When when Scrooge gets home and he sees Jacob Marley and his door knocker, there's a clip to the link to the Jim Carrey sort of semi-animated version of A Christmas Carol. That scene is there, and also with the George C. Scott version with there's kind of an 8-minute clip of when Marley comes to visit, and then also through their continued explanation of some more of the devices that appear, and it goes all the way through that opening chapter.
Okay. Excellent, excellent. With the continued invitation for others to annotate.
Yes, and I would imagine once it goes public, I had set it up to comment subject to moderation.
Okay.
Because you
Okay,
learn, one thing you learn when you're teaching middle and high school is that you always want moderation when they're.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Anything else about this project, Peter?
That's it.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. So I think we'll shift to this room then. So who's that?
I do not mind going.
All right. Thanks.
Do we?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I'll go back to Zotero. Or if you have something plugged in, we can.
No, ma'am. First, I'm gonna start off here with my picture of my boy.
Oh.
Because I am missing his awards ceremony tonight.
Oh, Greg.
So that, but my boy, I named him Dakota Zane Bauer. So he's named after Zane Grey. So and we're gonna talk about that just a little bit. So I thought I'd start off with that picture right there. So just real quick, I know we've already gone into what my presentation's about, but I wanted to take, I really enjoyed reading about Moretti and mapping. I didn't necessarily enjoy the trees or graphs so much, but I did enjoy the mapping part of it. And of course, I know it's not quite as abstract or as broad as what he's talking about. It's a lot more narrow, looking at one, set of authors' novels. But I thought it would be neat to go through and map. And I did that when I stumbled across, so to get in, what is it? And let me see if I can get here. I'll show you where it started and where it fits in. Oh no. Oh. Why didn't that work?
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness.
I bet you just typed it in.
Yeah, let's try it.
Unfamiliar computer.
Say again?
Did you log in through your Google apps? Maybe it'll go in that way.
Yeah, I don't know what all that means. Yeah, I don't know. Good. So just to get started, what is it? Where does it begin? So as I'm going through and I'm trying to read about, trying to find some digital humanities projects on Zane Grey, I thought that I ran across a site from the Zane Grey West Society, and inside of that, it had a two-dimensional map of Zane Grey and all of his Western novels and where their settings were. Like, each book is set in a different place in the West and so on and so forth. And I shared with you guys last time that what's unique about Zane Grey is he did extensive travels at a time where people didn't travel, they were prohibited from traveling. They didn't have the resources or money to do it. So, but he did, and he went to all these places. And so when he wrote his Western novels, he put in there, inside of his fictional novels, real places. And so as I'm looking through this map, it shows that I thought, we had read Moretti. I had gone through for my presentation earlier in the year, the Hathi Trust, and he went through, remember all the cool mapping that he did from that? And I thought, and it dawned on me, so where does this fit in? There are a lot of websites and articles about Zane Grey, but there's not really any digital humanities, projects out there about him. And in this, I thought, how great would it be to take this two-dimensional map and add depths and layers to it that's interactive where people can go through and click on it. So that's where it falls in. So I went from that piece and added to it, and I came up with what you guys know. We looked at it before. So I started off with just taking and customizing my Google Maps. I don't know if you guys have ever gone through there, not just the Google Maps, but my Google Maps, and going through, and you can customize. Instead of the little pin drops that are on there, I put the novel dust cover on it, And so if you go through and click, you see, so like the Desert Crucible is about an area, the actual setting is a real place, and it's about the area around Rainbow Bridge National Monument. And what's neat is right after it became a national monument, when there was really no access there, you had to ride a horse or hike into it to get to this place. Zane Grey visited. He was one of the first visitors there when it was just named a national monument. So he then took that and started writing an official novel on it. Well, Rainbow Bridge National Monument is also the in the middle of a Navajo Indian reservation. So and inside of that is an extremely sacred place for the Navajo. And if you look here, you see, so if you go down there today, this is an actual picture of what it looks like. If you were looking down from the canyon cliffs, looking down in it, this is what it looks like. Looking at it, this is the rainbow, so on and so forth. And then when you get down there, you see the little marker there. And you know, if I were to blow that, obviously it's just a screenshot there, but if I were to blow that up by clicking on the depth, if I'm reading the book and I say, well, what is that? And I go to where on the map where this is, and I click on it and I look and I see it talks about that being a sacred place for the Navajos and so on and so forth, and it gives a little information about it. And then if you, one of the things that we talked about in our conferences, both the peer conference and then my conference with you, Dr. Carter, was what if you took a piece of actual piece of the novel and also interwove it inside of these layers that are there that they can look and see. Well, here's one that says, another time we'll go up around the base of the mountain where you can look down at all the greatest scene in the world, said he. 200 miles of wind-worn rock, all smooth and bare with a single straight line, canyon, caves, bridges, the most wonderful country in the world. Even the Indians haven't explored it. It's haunted for them, and they have strange gods. The Navajos will hunt on the side of the mountain, but not the other. That north side is considered consecrated ground. My wife has long been trying to get the Navajos to tell her the secret of Nanazoshi. Nanazoshi means rainbow bridge. The Indians worship it, but as far as she can find out, only a few have ever seen it. I imagine it'd be worth some trouble. And then, of course, he goes on and talks a little bit more. So as a reader, you're picturing what that looks like. And I thought, well, you know, instead of you know, obviously it's cool to imagine it in your own, but it's an actual place. How much cooler would it be to click on a picture, read the segment of it, and to see what it actually looks like in real life? So I put that on there. And then another thing that I would like to do is actually, you know, I'm a huge Audible guy. I tons and tons of Audible books that I listen to way too much. I spend too much money on it. But how cool would it be to take a snippet of when you're reading, you know, the Desert Crucible, add yet another layer of someone reading that section to it, and you know, put in a professional spin on that. So that's the project, that's the prototype, that's what it's about, and that's so that's what it is. And where does it fit in? Well, that there's a lot of stuff out there, not really a lot of any real digital humanities projects about that, but I think it's a springboard for that, and certainly not as cool as someone could make it that was a professional, but I think it's a step from the two-dimensional map that they had listed on the Zane Grey site that they had. Also, Franklin had Franklin from the future, when she hears it mentioned in the past, a couple of good things that we could, some mapping things that I had here in this other deal that I couldn't log into. So I think that I wish I could get that figured out, but I'll screenshot that and send it to you so that you can have a picture of that, okay, Dr. Carter. So I think that I could take and use those mapping interactive maps and make it even better from those projects that are actually already exist. One of them was about the, you know, mapping Don Quixote, and I forget the name of the other one, but so I thought that was pretty cool. And I will say to you, I know Katie had said something about Wakelet being way cool, it is way cool. In fact, I also want to say that, Dr. Carter, I want to say also that I am thankful you made us put this, as much as I dreaded it when you said it, but I'm thankful that you made us do this on the website, create this website, because I can see so many applications that I could use this for in my professional capacity too, you know, so I'm thankful of that. So I talked about the project, where it fits in, where it can go, some different ideas for it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that
I don't think so.
I think I hit it all.
Yeah, I think so too.
My resources, I really, you know, leaned on graphs, maps, and trees, and I don't know, anything else you guys want me to show or talk about on that?
Well, we have access to everybody's projects, so I hope these will sort of serve as trailers to get you guys interested in going in and looking at these further. I'm sure you will. And on that note, if you have an opportunity to try to see if you can make that Wakelet thing public, maybe Katie can help you with that.
That'd be good, yeah. I thought I did, and I even tested it. I thought, well, is this not working because it's on my school site? And so I put it up on my phone and tried to do it separate, and it worked fine.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh, I'm good, and then I get here and it doesn't work.
Oh,
Of course.
well, technology.
So, yeah.
We're not going to leave this class loving technology, right?
That's it. That's it.
That wasn't our goal.
So very helpful. I enjoyed the project, enjoyed reading about it, and I think probably the thing that helps you learn most is right when you're about to turn it in or right after you turn it in, when you start looking at everyone else's project to see how they do that. Well, that's cool. Why didn't I do that? Well, let me fix what I just did, you know, that kind of deal. So
Excellent.
all right.
Well, all right. Bravo, Greg.
I don't know the best way. I'm scared to.
Yes.
Do I just click off there? Is that
yeah.
gonna mess it up?
Yeah. No, you're good.
Okay.
Good. Okay, so who's next? Brian?
Is that Katie, what you were saying I should have done to get onto the Wakelet?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That makes sense to me now. If you read my
I
reflection,
don't know. It's just a suggestion. I'm not sure.
no, I think you're probably right on. And if you, when you read my reflection, you see I'm really technology not savvy. So
That was not a requirement in this class.
Nobody knows. Yeah. See that robot. All right.
but I added many tools to my repertoire after this class, so it's
Nice.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. Me too. You guys found some cool stuff.
All right. So, ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So the project's called Metro Project. This is the short pitch. The Metro Project is designed to illustrate the type of understanding of a text that mapping can provide. Users can enter the world above Glukhovsky's post-apocalypse metro tunnels and see what existed above ground before the world was destroyed. Examine that site over time using a slider on a timeline and connect real-world losses to fictional characters. The goal is to add understanding to a text that cannot be gained by reading alone. About section. I make a comparison. The project was originally going to be, I'm going to map a video game journey and I'm going to map a book journey and I'm going to see what we can learn about that. And then it was brought to my attention by Dr. Carter that perhaps this is a real life Metro map, and wouldn't you know it is. So it changed the whole scope of this thing. And I made an excuse for myself not knowing that for an American, it's hard to imagine an intimate knowledge of foreign train lines. It would be like somebody in Kansas City knowing departure times at Grand Central. So I let myself off the hook a bit. Talk about definitions. What's the part that matters for this presentation? It all matters. The starting point station in the novel is translated in the video game as exhibition. I'm right here if you want to follow. No such translation exists in the English translation of Metro 2033. By typing in the same station's name into Google, just straight like this, like not even changing language or anything, I just typed in these characters. It brings up information about a site in Russia called the Exhibition of Achievements of National Economy. And this is a blurb from a Russian travel site. The center used to be entirely dedicated to glorifying the Soviet Republic's achievements in various different areas of production and agriculture. The vast grounds are designed around a central axis which stretches to the Fountain of Republics, a large golden monument glorifying the Soviet people. So what you have in this book, by mapping it out, is the starting point of a post-apocalypse where everybody lives in metro tunnels because the world is destroyed. They live off mushrooms, which is all they can grow without sunlight, and they trade in military grade ammo left over from before they blew up the world because they can't make it anymore. Above them is a former celebration of the cosmonauts who went to space while they're stuck underground, their agricultural achievements while they're eating mushrooms. And this is the kind of thing that if I had lived in the city this was written, I might have immediately gotten this kind of dark humor aspect to it. But since I had no clue this was even a real metro map, all of that just right over my head. So that's what the project turned into. Related projects, I obviously gave the Cyberpunk project here at the bottom that I presented on honorable mention because that's a Russian version of an American author who lives in Canada's site, and this is an American project on a Russian writer, so it had to go. Victorian serial novels, this is about understanding through timelines and manuscripts how to contextualize literature from a different time period, and mine is about contextualizing it across a geographical boundary. So related enough, I thought, perhaps. Joystick, thank you, Daniel, for this one. This is about basically turning literature into a video game, and since this is a novel that prompted video game adaptations and comic book adaptations already, it shows the sort of multimedia modes that exist. Lord of the Rings project, specifically the mapping section. No, I don't want to do. We'll get it. There it is. Specifically, the maps was originally much more useful because you can change characters and who you're using. So when I was envisioning this as two different journeys, this was pretty much who I was going to rip off. But now that it's a different thing, I'm going to rip off a totally different person who made this thing called Geography of the Post. But I'm actually going to hold off showing that until I go through the prototype. For resources, is there honorable mention? There was an article here about the importance of mapping. You can read. I didn't annotate these in like an academic sense. I took every article or every project and said, this is how it relates to my project. So they're all short and they're all kind of, found some stuff William Gibson wrote, which was interesting. I didn't know he published quite so many op-eds, but he wrote about, the Google one I had to put because I used Google Maps to prompt finding out like the university in the book is Moscow University, and I proved that with a Google map. And Gibson's arguments basically were all unpaid employees for Google. And so, I mean, he's not wrong, but thanks Google because I needed your map. It's hard to reconcile myself with that one. There I am. Let's see. Bio short, talking about myself in third person's weird, so I kept it, and then links in there. The prototype, if this works, is a Prezi. Yes. Yes. Okay. Uh-oh, it's still got to load. All right. Yes. So it's the forward to the book, and it's apparently the real plaque that you see in the metro tunnels. It says the Moscow Metro is a form of transportation which involves a heightened level of danger, which is just kind of a cute way to start the book. So the actual project, users enter the site with a representation of the map from Glukhovsky's book, which is right here. Full scale, I'm not going to dress it up. It's just, that's what you're going to see. This map, he's got a legend down here. So just wholesale his map. Stops of interest, I call them here, will be clickable, like the exhibition right here circled with a big O. They'll be interactive. It'll be clear in some way that you can click on some of these. The one that leads to Moscow University, the one that leads to this exhibition site, will be either off color or circled in some way, so you know you can interact with them. So you click on this exhibition station and you're brought to images of the location as it existed in the past above. This is a picture. This is the fountain that I read about in the blurb. It's hard to see it on this scale. So you'd be able to, for university, Moscow University, any other items of interest. Well, so what is the question there? The point of this kind of I know I ragged on Moretti and his impenetrable book, but we're all using his book to prove him right. So I guess he had something. The home station exhibition is built underneath a monument to Russian achievement, including agriculture. While people in the tunnels live off of mushrooms, they grow in the dark, which reveals much of the dark humor in Russian science fiction that doesn't translate to readers without the map. This is a short-term like expansion plans. You know, future iterations would include more stops, and the timeline incorporated at each stop. For example, this would change depending on which one you were looking at. The slider would go from 2033, which is the start of the book, and to 1938 for exhibition, because it was built in 39. So you go to 38, there's either pre-building or there's nothing there. You can slide through the construction of it, the renovation of it, and then you get to 2033, rubble. So, and you could go, now if I did the same thing with Moscow University, it would have to go back to the 1700s because it's a much older building. And the interface here is modeled, I say modeled after the geography of a post. Did I have that up here? This is the one I would steal wholesale for interface. This is a project that talks about opening and closing of post offices. And you can segregate parts of the timeline and it changes the map. In a similar way, I would have the timeline change the image. So that's who I stole from for that. This is built with something I wrote in the paper, JS or something they called it. Yeah, D3.js is the program they use, and all their code, and I don't know how common this is open source. Yeah. You can just wholesale lift it. And the maps from the Lord of the Rings, a right-click view source, that just looks like straight up web code. That might, now I don't know enough about it to read it all, whether they included stuff, but I wouldn't be surprised if like a team of decent HTML coders could do that themselves. Where is the, there we go. And how is this different than textual analysis? Readers can learn things about the text without using the text at all.
Right. Okay, Brian. Let's see. All right.
All right.
Hit it.
All right. So mine's kind of similar in a way to Brian's and also Greg's with the mapping concept. And so mine is called, I titled it Mapping Memories, Tracing the Past and the Loves of Cass McGuire. And if you remember, The Loves of Cass McGuire is the title of the Irish play by Brian Friel. So I said, I've developed this project in order to visually show the mapping and tracing of memories and how each memory can stimulate other memories as well as cross over to other branches within the same memory. I've chosen to use the Irish immigrant named Cass McGuire, who is the main character of Brian Friel's play. And let's see. So again, Moretti was huge in my project as well. Moretti, the part that was the most influential to me was his, I believe it's his maps and also his trees. And so for my project, I kind of envisioned infusing maps and trees. And you'll see in a little bit the prototype that I came up with of how I kind of envisioned that would work. But that was the most influential thing to me. Also, Ramsey's idea of fusing technology and the humanities together, or the sciences and the humanities, works with my project. Basically, my prototype is like this map of a brain and mapping memories on a brain, but I'll show you that in a minute. So the way I began this, though, I thought about, and if you remember, creating this project by having the text in the middle and having a timeline below and a timeline above and kind of tracing historical events in Ireland and the US and pop culture. And one of the sources for that was re-envisioning Japan. Let me see if I can find that real quick. And in that project, let's see, where is it at? They essentially just had a timeline where you could click on different advertisements, and I guess I didn't put the website here, but that's
What is
okay.
it? It's right there, I think. The Rochester.
Oh yes, there it is. Just looked right over it. They put a timeline on here, and you could go through and click along the timeline and view different images or videos from different time periods. And that's originally where I was going with my project. But after thinking about it a little bit more, I thought it'd be pretty cool to actually map and visualize the characters' memories. And so, let me see. So let me find the part that I want to mention here. So my map would be of the mind. So how would I go about creating this project so that it would make sense to the user? Because I was like, oh, how can I map memories? You know, all the stuff from Morietti and what you guys have presented were actual maps, like the Metro or, you know, stuff with Zane Grey, actual places. So I decided I would map the brain, and at the center of a picture of this brain that I'll show you in a minute, I would have Cass as a center, her consciousness, and which would represent the starting point or base of my scatter points and trees. The trees, the lines with branches would originate from the center and work their way out. The lines represent people, pop culture, places. For example, one line would be for Ireland and branch off. That line would be a memory related to Ireland. So for example, Ireland and the workhouse and Eden House. So these are connected. If the memory has a short description or merely is referenced, the scatter point would be represented by a smaller dot. If the memory has a longer description, the scatter point would be larger. While I was working on this idea, though, I had considered displaying these memories in particular locations in the brain that deal with certain types of memories. So for example, the amygdala is where the emotional or traumatic memories are stored, whereas the hippocampus is where events and facts and long-term memories are stored. However, I decided not to pursue that right now, but I included a picture of those sections. So let's see, I'll just go ahead and show you my prototype too. So this is a hand-drawn picture, so we could hand draw some stuff. So this is kind of the first stage of the prototype. This is what I was talking about, Cass, you know, herself right here in the middle. I'm not sure if you can see this very well, but there's Ireland, and it starts off, and then there's a memory here about the workhouse or Eden House, and then it goes to a larger memory. Let's see, and then I've got a Prezi I want to show you guys. That is the second stage of my prototype. So here is the drawing again. And so I decided to break it down into acts so you can map the memories based on the acts. So Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. So if you click on Act 1, it'll take you to places or people and places, and then you could click on that to further look at different aspects of the character, more specific people. Same with Act 2 and Act 3. And once you click on, say, a person in the act, it'll take you, it'll draw a memory or a line to that person and take you to a memory. And so this is a larger dot that I envision because this memory, she goes into great detail. It's an emotional memory. It's where one of her loves gives her a shamrock brooch. So once you click on that dot, that memory dot, it would take you and show you the page number, maybe just a little snippet about that memory, so you could go and look that up for yourself. Let's see. So that's... And one of the tools that I really liked was Voyant, and I thought it'd be really cool to somehow implement that into this project by putting some of the memories in there to see what's connected, what connections you get from words and ideas in the memory. So here, this is that memory of Jeff giving her that brooch. And so these are the words that stood out: hell, drunk, Jeff, no. And then you can see the connections here of Jeff and Cass. They stand out and connect together. And then you got hell up here. So it was very traumatic, right, and emotional memory. So it's interesting that those words stand out. And then if I was going to include like a transparent model of the brain with the areas where the memories, you know, certain types of memories stand out, I would put this on top of that brain of the memories, and you could see where those fit within the brain, if these are emotional or traumatic. Let's see, let me go back here. And yeah, and so this idea comes from this idea of tracing and trace from Derrida in his work, Writing and Difference. And so I talked about this play before in a conference paper and used this idea of trace, but never really thought about it in this way, tracing memories and that sort of thing. But Derrida says that trace is the erasure of selfhood, of one's own presence, and is constituted by the threat or anguish of its irremediable or impossible to cure, put right, disappearance of the disappearance of its disappearance. So my project will essentially examine the idea of tracing memories through each act and how memories disappear or recreated, and you can see these lines being drawn in her mind or in her brain. So. Some other related projects that really influenced me were mapping letters, mapping the Republic of Letters. That one showed me, you know, kind of how to connect different correspondence. So I was thinking about doing that with memories instead of letters, as well as Linked Women's, the Linked Women's Project, tracing women's intellectual work in rhetoric and composition. So with tracing ideas and tracing things. So everything related to mapping and tracing was pretty much influential.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
So I don't know what you guys think about that, but that's
Excellent.
pretty much it. So this is a picture of Ireland, of me and I took that. Yes, I took that live in Ireland. So yeah.
Oh, you did?
Beautiful.
Mhm.
Beautiful.
Yep.
So I propose we take a short break and then we'll come back and play Lonnie's and then play the ones who are our future people. So let's get, is Lonnie here? Yeah, Lonnie's here. I see the tip of her head. All right, so Lonnie, what am I supposed to press? Oh, okay, so let me go ahead and open the project itself. And so is this where you want me to start, Lonnie?
Yes, that's great.
Okay.
So on this, we just kind of put at the bottom, there's just like a little blurb that kind of explains I know a lot of people in this class are educators in public school setting, you know, K through 12, but I also know that there are several that are not. So it just kind of gives a little explanation of, hey, you know, most of us that are working in K through 12 have ESL students, and you know, and it's treated differently than it is in college. You know, you don't just have this one room of they're all intermediate level and this other classroom they're all advanced level. You've got them on multiple levels and multiple grades, and you know, progress differently. And then at the same time you have, you know, your other students that you're teaching at the same time. So it just kind of, Kendall and I both, this is mine and Kendall's, by the way, not just mine. We just kind of felt like there are so many different teacher experiences with this in particular that we thought that this maybe could be somewhere where teachers could kind of share their stories, like a collection of stories, and we could kind of feel like we're not alone. You know, like Moretti's got, one of his quotes is about how when you are down low in the trees, sometimes you don't see everything clearly, right? But when you're up higher and you can see that there are other trees, you know, just like yours, and that you're not alone. You do have your own individual story, but that there's someone else out there with a story like you. So if you want to click on, oh, you're on About. Okay, yes, on our About.
Okay.
No, that's fine. About. There are two lines toward the bottom that I wrote in italics just to make sure I went over them. I actually think I just kind of quoted one of them. Moretti claims that quantitative work is truly cooperative, not only in the pragmatic sense that it takes forever to gather the data, but because such data are ideally independent from any individual researcher and can thus be shared by others and combined in more than one way. So the data for our project is the story of each individual, and although we are the researchers, the data itself is independent of us and individual person, but we're bringing it together to be shared. And then further down on that same page is where he says, you know, with the little luck, these maps will be more than the sum of their parts. They will possess emerging qualities which were not visible at the lower level. What I was trying to say a minute ago. When you're in the trenches on the lower level, you feel alone. But in this space, if we map the individuals with their stories, others would see that they're not alone, whether their story is more like Kendall's or more like mine. So if you click on related DH projects, so these are some of the ones that kind of informed ours, like the mapping Islamophobia. We felt like really it was just a project to show the data and the individual incidents, but it didn't necessarily like present a problem in a way to solve it. It didn't show a solution. It more just highlighted the issue and the widespread understanding of the issue. So that's why we felt like ours would be similar to that. It's not giving solutions, but it's just highlighting the individuals that experience this. And then the same with on number 2 there, it's the digital archive of literacy narratives, and it's a place where literacy narratives have been digitally archived, and individuals can find other literacy narratives like their own or research literacy narratives to find commonalities among them. So ours is kind of like that, but it's like the narrative of the people that end up teaching ESL. And then Project Vox is number 3 we have on here, and it is dedicated to modern women writers who've been overlooking the history of philosophy. The project is intended to create a space for students and teachers to gain access to these philosophers and their material. So our project will give like a similar space to that will feature stories of ESL teachers and how they came to be. And then the 4th one is similar to the first one. It's kind of like a mapping issue. It's just to provide a visual aid. And then on the resources tab, am I going too fast?
No, you're not. I don't think so. I think I'm catching up. Okay.
Because I think I've already been talking 5 minutes, so I have 5 left, right? So I'm trying to.
You're good.
Okay.
You're good.
So this one, if you look at the last one there, I don't know how to say this scholar's name, but basically they're talking about making sure that we don't repeat the trend of so many things being heavily white and male, that they're more intersectional. And so we felt like, considering that female educators outnumber men, we felt like we would have predominantly more female in public school. In the K through 12 setting, there are more females than males, so we felt like we'd have a big number of females. But of course, we want to include the fellas too. You know, it'd be open for men, women, and you know, teachers of all shapes, sizes, colors, nationalities. And a lot of times, ESL teachers, not every time, of course, but sometimes they've also been ESL learners themselves. So then they bring that added experience to that. And then on the, I guess we'll do the contact page before we go to prototype, because that's a link.
Yeah.
On the contact page, I just had a little blurb about us. I felt like I set this to private, where only I think you and Kendall can open it, but I was just making sure in case someone somehow stumbled upon it that they know it's for a class and that it's not finished, and I didn't want someone to think that it was a finished thing. And then we both have links to our blogs under our names, and we both wrote a little bit about our experiences. So, for example, Kendall and I both have very different experiences. So sorry, my phone's ringing. We have very different experiences in how we came to be ESL teachers, and that's kind of what got us thinking about that in the first place. So that kind of just gives a little bit background on the two of us. which also we used a little bit of ours on our on the prototype itself. So it's kind of repeated there. If you want to click on the prototype, it should take you, hopefully it will let you into it since you have the link. Yep. Yay! Okay, so this, I have this set up as flowers and on a vine because it's not necessarily going to go in any certain order, and it's not really mapped like by location, but the flowers, these are just the areas that I know of that people end up as ESL teachers in some experiences that they have. There's room for many more flowers. So, you know, if teachers were to add their experiences on here, they may not fit into one of these categories, and we would add an additional flower on the vine, or they might fit into more than one category. For example, I'm in 3 of these, and Kendall's in 2 of these. So, you know, we don't want it to seem like this is meant as this is the way to become an ESL teacher, because I have no idea how to become an ESL teacher nowadays. I graduated with that in like 2002, 2003. So I don't know what the current path is. These are just for a place for teachers to be able to tell their stories, not to learn like how to be. So if you want to click on the college prep flower, yeah. So there are some people that, you know, right away they know they want to be an ESL teacher, and that's what they study. And then if you want to click on ESL major, minor. So we thought we could have like text here that kind of explains. I may have even written something on the text. I don't remember if you want to click it. And then, yes, so I wrote about what I did because it was my minor. The next, if you want to hit forward, I just have like a place where we could have videos, yeah, where you could like teachers could put like almost like a digital story if they wanted there of what their experience with that particular avenue was like. And then you want to go forward again. Oh, okay, I love this. I love Lucy clip here because I feel like it's very relevant. Ricky Ricardo is he is an English language learner. He's bilingual, and he's trying to read through a book, and it's got some confusing English stuff in there. And so I feel like anybody that's learned a second language would relate to that. But you don't have to watch it now because
oh, whoops.
You can keep hitting forward.
G. It is a fun clip, guys. Gotta take a look.
And then School of Life, if you want to click that one, I think I only have 1 minute left. These are just different ways, like some people get into the field, whether they did a study abroad, maybe they have a personal relationship with someone like a neighbor or a family member. And then, I don't remember what the third one was that I had. Oh, okay, yeah. And then just a place where they can write on there, I guess. And if you want to go to the next one. Sorry.
That's okay, you're fine. I'm just trying to Vanna here.
Trial by Fire. So this is Kindle, and this would be the other end. You know, like it was my minor in college, and I grew up in a home with an English learner. My brother was in the Army, and he became bilingual. And when he returned from Panama, he had to find a new, you know, he left the service. He had to find a new job and save money for a house and all that. So his wife and kids, they moved in with my family. And my brother's a lot older than me. But so I lived in a house with, you know, he was bilingual, but she wasn't. So, you know, I was in contact with that from a young age and studied it. Kindle's a lot like other teachers, though. They go to school to teach something, you know, English, math, whatever, and then once they enter the classroom, then they're told, oh, hey, we need you to be ESL certified. So then they have to go and take a test, and then they study for the test, and then once you pass it, hey, now you should know what to do. But, you know, taking the test doesn't really actually prepare you for knowing what to do and knowing how to help those kiddos the best. So that's kind of her story there, her experiences with learning languages and with studying for that test and with the expectations of how to service the best. And then I think the last one, last flower is post-grad, if maybe you go back to do that later. So for instance, some of my classes that I'm taking toward the PhD have added up to equal that. I have the TESOL graduate certificate now. So that was just another area we had to add. So we really just, would want for, like I said, back in the Google Google Sites page, the data really is like the other teachers, other people's stories. So people would, add to this, and that would be our data. I'm sorry, I went over a little bit.
No, you're good. You're good. That's great. Thank you so much, Lenny. And also thank you, Kendall.
Yes, you'll be watching in the future.
Yes, thank you, Kendall, in the future. Okay. All right, so we have at this point a couple of a few projects to share from our future folks. Let's start with Lendavere. She's got a link to her project, which you'll be able to see in the screencast. So that's there, but let's go ahead and do this.
Hello, class.
Hello.
Today I'm going to be sharing my final project with you. As I mentioned in several of my blog posts throughout this course, I'm nearing the end of my coursework and getting ready to start a dissertation. And over the last year or so, I've narrowed down my dissertation topic to focus on Steinbeck and his nonfiction work. In my readings and studying and learning more about Steinbeck, I've learned that he traveled extensively, had many relationships with important and influential figures. He maintained thorough journals, an extensive letter writing life, and just tons of handwritten documents from him exist. So the idea for my project here is to create an interactive map that illustrates these relationships that Steinbeck had with people, his travels, his connections and relationships to important and influential moments in history. Ideally, this interactive map will include information blurbs, photos, images, videos, anything of that nature that lays out the important events of Steinbeck's life in a chronological order. Eventually, ideally, I would like to see digitized images of Steinbeck's journals, letters, other documents, and or video or sound recordings of Steinbeck himself discussing these various events of his life. I'd like to have these things displayed alongside a map and or timeline that show the progression of his life. In my study and learning about Steinbeck and my research, I've learned that there are very few digitized images of his journal entries. There are more digitized images available online of his letters, but there are the digitized copies that are available online of his journal entries are fairly limited. So for this project, if time, travel, things of that nature weren't an issue, I would ideally like to be able to travel to the Steinbeck Museum in California, where his complete journals, letters, all of those documents are housed and available for use with research projects, things of this nature. So moving over to the About section of this website is kind of where I take the time to elaborate a little more about the specific details, plans, ideas I have for my project. I discuss the other digital work that is available that's related to this topic. Currently, there's very little digital work actually specifically about Steinbeck to be found online. I was only able to find, excuse me, I was only able to find one particular digital humanities project about Steinbeck, and it was created by an English 690 class as a group project. It was rather limited because it focused specifically on the Grapes of Wrath and the historical context of that novel. So it's much more narrow than the idea I have for my project. I also focus on discussing two particular digital humanities projects that I found that really kind of drew me in with how they presented the information, the mapping tools they used, and how they were effectively able to share the information that they had collected. One of these projects was the Hedda Morrison map project. Hedda Morrison was a photographer who traveled throughout China in the 1930s and 40s, and her project this project uses the story map tool that was very easy to use, very simple, very user friendly, and effectively showed images of her photography, but also biographical blurbs and information boxes that were related to her and her travels. The other project I focused on here was the Mapping the Republic of Letters project. We looked at this together as a class earlier in the semester, and I went back to it because I was drawn to how it was able to effectively convey relationships between and correspondence between people across geographical spaces. Throughout this section of the project, I also reference several of the text we've discussed over the semester, and the thread kind of tying all of my about section, the related projects, and the various resources I've referenced here is the idea of literary mapping. I've really been drawn to that aspect of this course, and so that is the common thread throughout my about section, the projects and the resources. So when you click over to the related projects, I've got 7 or 8 projects here that I've looked at that use various tools to illustrate different mapping ideas, different ways to show, to track geographical information. I've also listed here the Hedda Morrison project that I mentioned previously, as well as the Mapping the Republic of Letters project and the Steinbeck project that was created by that particular class. When I get over to the resources section here, I've got 10 or 11 articles here, scholarly articles that I've looked at. Luckily, several of the digital humanities projects I looked at have scholarly work has been done about them. So there's several of these articles that focus on these mapping projects and the ideas of literary mapping, and really help me to bring my own ideas together for this project. Moving on to the prototype section of the page, this is just a very simplistic, very basic idea of kind of what I would want this kind of a project to show. This is using the story map tool that was also used in that Hedda Morrison project. So you just click on here. You can move through different geographical locations. You can input images, blurbs, any types of information you're wanting to share here. As I click through and I'm brought down to this one, this is kind of the first image I've included here of Steinbeck's own handwritten journals. When he was working on The Grapes of Wrath, he kept a working journal that he wrote in every day, kept a very thorough account of his writing process. So that's what I would like to have here is kind of this image of his own handwriting, his own documents, maybe kind of shown alongside some information about The Grapes of Wrath itself. Moving on down here, you get to the Gulf of California, where he this kind of really ties into more of his nonfiction work rather than just journals. But at one point, he traveled around the Gulf of California with his friend Ed Ricketts, who was a scientist. It was kind of a scientific excursion where they studied and analyzed sea life and sea environment. And in his time in this excursion, he kept a very thorough journal. And he also turned it into a publication. This publication isn't necessarily the journal that was published later on, but he created an actual a book, a nonfiction book about this experience. So this is kind of another one of those things where all of these kind of aspects and details in my mind come together that I would like to see displayed in this project. Some of his handwriting, his handwritten accounts, the manuscript of this particular event in his life, shown alongside the geographical location, shown alongside photos and other images about this particular time, moment, event in his life. So as you scroll on through the project here, I've noted various geographical locations where he was found at different periods in history. At one point, he was in Europe during World War II, serving as a news dispatcher. He wrote lots of news dispatches that were sent back to the States and printed in newspapers and magazines. Those were later collected and published as once there was a war. He also traveled to Russia during the Cold War. He kept a very thorough detailed journal of his travels there that was later published as a Russian journal. Again, here, ideally, this journal would be shown on my map on this project in his own handwriting, in his own hand, basically detailing his travels, maybe alongside some other photos and videos of him discussing this part of his life as well. So again, as you click through this prototype here, you're just seeing me kind of track the various geographical locations where he was influenced and actually wrote some of his nonfiction work. I've included, where I can, different images of the actual handwritten journals or documents. But as I stated before, those are very limited in access online. And then lastly, I've got the contact page included here. Just gives a little bit of information about me and where I can be contacted. So that's my project, guys. I hope you've enjoyed listening to me share this with you. I'm really excited about it and would like to see what more I possibly could do. Thank you for your time.
That's pretty good. Pretty good. Interesting. I want to play with that story map project or tool.
Did she say what tool that was? I missed. I didn't catch.
Story mapping. Story map.
I like that.
Isn't that cool?
I thought so too.
She's got her website has links to tools as well. So yeah, it's definitely worth playing with, and it looks like it's user friendly enough to bring into the classroom. I think I've got a literary criticism class in the fall for undergraduates. I think I'm gonna use it. We'll see. I'll play this summer. All right. So where are we? Not behaving. All right, Jessie, her project is very interesting. Just to show you what she's doing, she's talking about mapping sex trafficking in Dallas, and she has she used one of the main models was mapping Islamophobia for one. But I encourage you guys to look at it. And Jessie, in the future, if you can work on your link and see if you can get one that we can all play, I would be grateful for it. So, Gray, Museum of Fantastical Lands. All right, this is our last one.
Hello, class. Today I'll be presenting my final project, the Museum of Fantastical Land Maps. My project website's already live for everyone to visit. There you'll find the About page that includes an in-depth introduction of my project proposal. Under the Resource page, you'll find scholarly texts that help to support the content of my project. And you'll also see a page devoted to digital humanities projects that have inspired the digital aspect of mine. And now I'll introduce my prototype. My project proposal envisions an online museum, one inspired by the collection of essays and maps sourced within the Writer's Map, edited by Hugh Lewis-Jones. This museum would lead into virtual interactive exhibits of fictional literary maps. These maps will include authorial and narrative annotations, but its main attraction will be its interaction tools that will allow visitors to run various paths of each story map. For example, the map of Narnia will allow users to choose which books to include as they follow the paths of its main narratives or character arcs. The project will also allow users to use a juxtapose tool to compare two maps side by side, contrasting and comparing different fictional lands, as well as reading source notes from the authors about the map's inspiration and creation. Space is a place that matters. It is not a passive void, but rather an active participant, which is why I hope to invigorate visitors with the realization of the potential of literary space. I want users to see firsthand how authors use their literary space and what that space means to us as we navigate the narrative. Maps reveal what text alone cannot. Distance reading allows us to reassess how space in literature is used, why certain paths are built, why certain places are placed as they are, and how characters become centralized throughout it all. What we may reveal from maps isn't necessarily some great significant thing that'll change an entire plot, but perhaps we see a sort of movement, how a character seems to avoid certain places, or perhaps we see how characters linger towards a particular spot. The list goes on, and the point is, literary maps are more likely than not going to give us a new perspective of the narrative. The main reading from this semester that has inspired me is Franco Moretti's Graphs, Maps, Trees. Moretti, as we know, advocated for the benefit of the distance reading that comes in mapping. Moretti says it best. What do literary maps do? First, they are a good way to prepare a text for analysis. You choose a unit, walks, lawsuits, luxury goods, whatever. Find its occurrences, place them in space. Or in other words, you reduce the text to a few elements and abstract them from the narrative flow and construct a new artificial object like the maps. And with a little luck, these maps will be more than the sum of their parts. They will possess emerging qualities which were not visible on the lower level. A source from outside our semester reading that has influenced and inspired my project is that by David Cooper and Gary Priestnall, who argue in their essay that through processual intertextuality, it will be possible to further develop digital literary mapping practices. They discuss all the potentiality of digitized maps. One attribute in particular is how maps can, and I quote, allow the user to develop an experiential understanding of the disjunctions between the features of the textorial topography and the fantastical geography. What I found most intriguing of this work, specifically in how it relates to my project, is how they describe the interconnectedness of map making and map reader. The focus of the power of the map reader, the user, is what I would want my project to engage in. After all, as the authors state, users possess the power to make their own personal associations with other landscapes, both real and imagined. The authors give a lot of importance to the user. First, I like how they portray readers as such, as users, to enact that vision of being proactive in literary mapping, and how users in all reading, not just those with maps, can revisit the authorial cartography in an attempt to mentally map out fictionalized geography. The user is an active part of the mapping process, and what better way to showcase this than through an interactive map museum? This is how I envision my project website. The homepage will feature an exhibit hall style side panel, similar to a feature found on story maps. Clicking on a map will open a pop-up window displaying options. Select to directly open map, go to author's page for other maps and or notes on roads, select to juxtapose map with another for a side-by-side comparison. Above the exhibit hall will be a toolbar that categorizes all of the project's features, the maps, the author notes, and the juxtapose tool page. One of the main inspirations for my project is the interactive map from the Lord of the Rings project. The tool I would use from this site is the legend that allows users to pick and choose which narrative lines to follow. This is a mock-up of how such a map like Treasure Island can work once digitized and using the interactive legend from the Lord of the Rings project. This page will also provide quick links to pop-up author notes or to take the user to the juxtapose tool with another map. Another tool I would like to use is the Gigapixel tool from the Story Maps JS at Night Lab, as it allows one to use the story map interface to explain what's happening in a static image. In this case, I would use it to allow all static dots on my map to open up with narrative annotations of the place and or event the dot is located upon. As an example, you take Treasure Island, you see the dot, you click on it, it will zoom in and open the side panel that will include quoted passages from the book. The next tool I will incorporate into my project website is the Juxtapose.js tool from the Night Lab site. The tool is usually used, as seen in this example, from a project on Night Lab, in which two photographs of the same place showcase what happens over the course of time. It seems most stage projects use a tool for this, but that does not discourage me in wanting to adapt the tool for my idea. I believe in using the tool's adaptability to give users a space to play. This will be their sandbox to compare two fictional worlds and see what they can make of it. Here's an example of two maps using the Juxtapose.js tool. There will be a small pop-up dismissible bubble that will walk users through comments from the chosen map's authors. I chose to feature these two maps, of Cressida Cowell's Isle of Burke and J.M. Barrie's Neverland, due to how Cowell discusses how Neverland is a direct inspiration to her fictional creation of Burke. This shows how placing these two worlds together can give a user the potential to find connecting bonds in the physical and active nature of its space. This last slide is just an example of the main author notes page. Here, users can explore a map more in depth by reading source annotations from its author. In conclusion, I want users of this site to become active users of the literary space these maps portray. Even if they leave the site with more questions than answers, then that means they have taken active notice of the potential and the distance reading of maps. Narrative is not just found in the turn of a page, it can be found in the imagined space of a place. These fantastical maps may not reveal something extraordinary all the time, but perhaps they will reveal the beauty in the ordinary. Thank you. I'll have this up on my blog if you want to leave any comments or questions. Thanks again.
Hi, can you get that light?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So.
Get ready.
Yeah.
I know. I warned you.
So this brings us to the conclusion of a really, I know. I know you guys will be grateful to have your nights back with your families, and but I just enjoyed this so much. One of the wonderful things about the digital humanities is that it is unmasterable. It's just you guys introducing new projects and new tools. I learn something every single time, and not just in the ways that we always learn stuff from our students, but like I didn't know that existed. I had no idea. My mind is blown. So the main thing I wanted you guys to get out of this class was to think differently about texts, about ways to understand texts, about ways to teach texts, and to just turn everything inside out, which is one of the joys, I think, of digital humanities. It's one of the frustrations of it, too. What I did not want you guys to leave the class with is an overwhelming feeling that you have to know how to use these tools, because you don't, because we collaborate, because you master one and they're going to come up with others. It's just undoable. So the idea is just to think about a world in which one might reconceptualize the work that they're doing as teachers or scholars through the digital humanities. What's already there, what might be there like in a week and a half, because it will be, and what you guys can do, which you've already done, to serve our understanding of these various projects by bringing these different modalities, by bringing place, physical space, on top of literary space, or literary space against literary space, or by bringing the generic genes together from fictional and historical spaces, or by mapping brains. I mean, geez, you guys are good. Are you impressed with one another? All right, round of applause for this great brain trust we have in here. Okay, I am done. Do you guys have any, well, okay, no, I'm not done. One last thing. One takeaway from everybody from the stuff that you guys have presented to one another. I mean, what are you gonna walk out of here and maybe apply to your classes, or what are you going to walk out here wanting to look at more? What stands out? Yeah.
That last picture slider thing.
That's
Where was that when I was trying to write? That would have been, because with the timeline. That's exactly
it's perfect.
what I wanted to see.
So next, dissertation, yeah.
So that's the taking that.
What about you, Daniel?
I'm going to be thinking about mapping everything now. I love that, like looking at it from a distance, perspective, that orbital view, as Ramsey was saying, and just seeing everything from that different perspective. I think is really cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
And it's so multivalent. There's so many different ways to do it. What about you, Greg?
A couple of things. Like I mentioned a while ago, the tools that I like to steal and use, whether the website, the annotation tool that we went over in the sandbox, the Wakelet. I can really see myself using the Wakelet. I can see myself doing blogs for our district, and
yeah,
a lot of different usage tools that I can implement.
So you guys said it used Wakelet. Is that something that might be used in places Zotero? Is that, or is it a different kind of thing?
So maybe Katie could explain it more, but the way I saw it, so for instance, whenever I wanted to go through and put in the related digital projects, you can click on it and you can kind of design a picture to go up on, as the top of the page. But then you can embed a link to wherever this site is, this web page or this project is, and it pulls up. And you can scroll up and down. It has a picture and a little blurb about the little projects, and you can click on it and it'll pull up.
It's very attractive too.
It looked good and it looked a lot better than just typing in information about the project.
And it's really easy to use because when you click up and when you open a new tab on your browser, it immediately says, do you want to add any of these tabs that you have open to this Wakelet folder? Like if you add the extension or whatever. So it's really easy to use. So say you have, sometimes I'll be looking for something and have 4 or 5 different tabs open. You can add all of them to the folder without having to individually go through and decide, well, I liked this part of this and this part of this.
I can see myself organizing my dissertation articles with it, going through and putting that stuff down. Anybody knows has gone through it, you struggle trying to find your little system of how to organize the thing,
Yeah. I'd hoped Zotero was going to be a good solution for that. Sometimes it is because it can capture all the information at once, but anyway, everything's imperfect. So Katie, what's your takeaway?
Well, I was going to say Wakelet before Greg stole it, but...
Okay.
So sorry.
That's good. Double vote. Yeah, that's fine. That's enough.
But I liked Wakelet, but I also really liked the blogs, like he was saying. And then I, with the Jane project, I hadn't really used Google Sites as much as I did with this project. And I didn't realize you could pull in so many apps into that. Like you could pull in the Wakelet into it. You can pull in the Prezi into it. And so I liked that. That might be cool as a tool for students, kind of portfolio style stuff too.
Excellent. Are you going to have your students do any digital humanities projects, Katie?
I did. I brought in that staging Shakespeare, and they kind of made not great versions, but kind of started looking into how they could kind of look at things differently than they usually do. No more slideshows. How can we make this more interesting? So they kind of started thinking about it.
Okay, cool. How about you, Tamara? What's your takeaway?
Okay, so my takeaway is that I really want my students to realize how living and breathing literature is. A lot of my students just tell me, I hate reading, but they don't understand that reading is action with the text. And so I want them to really interact with it more, whether it is through creating a digital humanities project or through a blog. And so I've already been talking to our early college high school coordinator for next year, and we want our students blogging more so that they do feel like they have a contribution. So that's my takeaway.
Okay. And Jennifer?
It takes me forever to unmute. I would definitely never let my students not be digital again. After I had your other class where a few summers ago where we made YouTube videos, the whole little Maymester was the YouTube video.
Yeah, digital storytelling, yeah.
Yes. So I've done that since then, with not my dual credit, but my night class kids, you guys have to make a video and present it and everything. So I would definitely use it to give it. My real takeaway is oh my goodness, look at all this digital stuff I've learned how to use, and then I'm so scared it's going to go out of style,
And it will.
Hey, right, my Michael Jackson glove, hey, 3 decades ago. So I'm kind of wait for me, guys. I just learned, so hopefully it will wait for me to, and things will stop being invented. That would be awesome. I'm just kidding.
That's right. Stop today before we leave this classroom.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. All right, Lonnie, what about you?
Sorry. I actually am just going to keep following some of you guys. So hopefully you'll actually post some of your projects on your blogs, because I want to steal some of your project ideas when I'm using them in class. And I was thinking how I actually wrote this on my Reflections blog. I think of digital humanities a little bit as like a teacher. You know, we take the words on the page and we make it more interactive for the student. We provide video clips or pictures or images or soundtracks or whatever with our lessons. And so I feel like, oh, if I just had a DH project for every lesson I teach, then my work is done. And we'll just put projects and go through them. So some of you guys have some really cool ones, and you need to just post them on your blog so I can stalk you and steal your links. And
that's what we have learned as teachers and students, right? Steal.
Beg, borrow, and steal. Don't reinvent the wheel.
I like that. What about you, Abigail?
My main thing is just a totally different perspective. I've learned how a lot of the stuff that I use every day, like the Google Maps or even my game station, PlayStation or whatever, the scan code, stuff like that is a digital humanity, and how you can use it for different stuff, and that's like blown my mind. So
yeah, ditto. So there's this forced visibility of these things. And I'm thinking back to the conversation that you guys had and helped me understand with the AR wine bottle and the criminals in the past. And oh man,
I saw those wine bottles at a gas station.
You did at a gas station. Classy.
They're on Walmart. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I never noticed them before.
Did you try it? Oh, you had to have an app, I guess.
Yeah. I didn't buy it. I just saw it. Like, oh, I know what that is.
Okay, guys. You're still hooked up with one another. You have access to everybody's final projects. I hope you'll all take looks at them. And I hope you will also leave comments at one another's blogs. Tell each other how fabulous you are, because they are. We've got some time. And I'm going to be grading these over the next week. And I'm going to have a ball. So thank you guys so much. Great semester. Cheerio.